welcome to Hot Topic. I'm Hugh Richards. For this election special, I'm joined by the parliamentary candidates of the constituency of Great Grimsby. The Labour incumbent, Austin Mitchell, is retiring after 38 years in the House, so Grimsby will have a new boy or a new girl. The candidates are Steve Besant for the Liberal Democrats, Mark Jones for the Conservatives and Melanie On for Labour. We also invited Victoria Ayling for UKIP and Vicky Dunn for the Green Party, but for excellent reasons, they couldn't make it. So I'm particularly grateful to those who could. All of you, thank you very much for coming in. I just want to start, Mark, with you. Great Grimsby hasn't elected a Conservative Member of Parliament since, I don't know, what, William Pitt the Younger? Long time, anyway. What would the Conservatives do locally here to help Great Grimsby?
I think that's why it is such an exciting time, the fact that we've had a long-standing MP that's been a local champion, and what I'm hearing on the doorstep is that a lot of people have voted for Austin rather than for a particular party, and they're very open to a debate about what will happen. And certainly, you know, we're seeing today the signing of the Humber growth deal, and you know that's bringing tens of millions of pounds to bring prosperity to our area, and it's really come about as a result of our, you know, Conservative-led government, and I think that a Conservative MP will drive more of the same.
Well, it's Conservative-led government, you say. Steve, I would assume that you'd say it's the Liberal influence there that's been helpful. I think the last time there was a non-Labour MP, he might have been a Whig, which is your ancestor party. How would a Liberal Democrat be able to help Great Grimsby?
Different opinions to Mark, because I think the Liberal Democrats have moderated some of the things what the Conservative may have implemented. But the Liberal Democrats have come forward with their green credentials they have, which has been very important. Yesterday we saw the announcement of the largest wind farm in the world going to be built, just right on our doorstep, which is very, very important. We've seen the enhancement of Grimsby Docks with the renewable energy sector. We're on the verge of not just takeoff, we're on the verge of seeing our port one of the biggest ports in the world we are for renewable technology. And that is what the Liberal Democrats have achieved, the doubling of wind turbines in this country.
I hate to say it, I mean, that seems very positive, but that seems almost as if you're advocating a green policy, and regrettably the Green candidate couldn't be here, but what's the difference then between your policy and the Green policy?
Our policy is completely different to theirs. Theirs is, I'm not criticising Melanie on this as a socialist, but it's more socialist than the Labour Party is. And I think Melanie would agree with me this. They would tax a lot more heavily than the Labour Party. They wouldn't try and bring down the deficit at all. They would go a lot more extreme on taxation than the Labour Party, and I don't agree with none of that. Our opinion is on free market, etc. A lot more.
We'll talk about who's outflanking who in a moment, but Melanie, I sort of reframe the question for you. We've had a long time Great Grimsby's been represented by the Labour Party, and it still isn't perfect. How come?
No, I don't think that any constituency would claim to be perfect. You know, I think Grimsby's had an incredibly tough time, and Austin's done his absolute best to, you know, support some of the core industries that, you know, have suffered greatly, you know, over the last 50 years. I don't think that Grimsby really got its fair share. You know, in the boom years, when I think, you know, in the late 90s, early noughties, you know, there was a lot more money around, and I don't think that Grimsby, you know, had enough work and cohesion, I suppose, between local politicians to achieve the kind of status that it needed to get attention and to bring money to the area. So I think that's really where it's failed, and it's a shame because I see lots of other towns and cities in Yorkshire and Humberside that have benefited and, you know, now are able to claim a lot more in terms of benefits than we've been able to say in Grimsby.
So were you to be elected and return to this new Parliament, what would be your first priority for your constituency?
Well, the most important thing I think here is about training and jobs, and that is across the piece. That's what people are concerned about. If it's not jobs for themselves, it's about jobs for their children, and it's about what happens when their children leave education and how they access those jobs. The other issue is a lot of people who have been made redundant over the last 5 years, and they're struggling to get jobs. And so it has to be a focus on inward investment into Grimsby, making sure that Grimsby is on the map, making sure that in terms of the LEP that it's got a strong voice, and that we managed to draw investment towards Grimsby rather than it going to other areas.
Mark, that doesn't sound very controversial to me. Would you agree with that?
I would say it doesn't sound very controversial. I think what differs is how you go about it. I mean, skills are massively important, and great strides have been made and will continue to be and need to be made. But you've also got to create a place that people want to live in, bring up their children and stay in the area. What we don't want is to upskill people and then them leave. So it's creating a town that people want to stay in. We've just heard from Melanie that in the late 90s, early noughties, the investment didn't come our way. Well, these are Labour years we're talking about. What we need is an investment strategy that's going to continue to grow the area in the way that it's already been started by the Conservatives, and that will help with the skills, it will help with the jobs, it will help create a better town to live in.
When you say that it's under the Conservatives that the investment environment has been created here,
I do.
Is it because of a Conservative-led government, or is it because this happens to be the moment when a new industry is arriving, which is appropriate here, not because of the colour of the government, but because of the geography of an estuary and the wind on the sea?
It's all of the above, but you've got to create the right environment for those people to want to come and do business. Just because you have a particular location that might suit, if they don't feel that the government of the day is pro-business, is going to actually help them, then they will not come. In addition to that, you see today's growth deal, £100+ million. Well, that is a direct result of this government. That money was not here, it now is.
It's interesting now. I mean, seeing what from that money, that £100 million, I was having a look the other day, seeing exactly how much of that is coming to Grimsby, and I can't identify any more than about 4 to 6 million. So is that what the Conservatives are achieving for Grimsby as a result of that growth deal?
It's infrastructure for the whole area, because people from Grimsby need to get to other places. So
well, I'm interested to know how the infrastructure that's going to benefit Hull and is going to benefit Bridlington is going to benefit the south of the Humber, because I don't see how that works.
The South Bank is getting massive investment, the likes of which it has not seen before. So I'm not saying that if elected I would do nothing because the problem's solved and it's done. What I'm saying is, if elected, I would be pushing for more. I would be working with partners, other MPs in the area as a team to say more investment to the east. Look what's been achieved already. We need more of that.
So why isn't Martin Vickers calling for that now? I mean, you've got a Conservative MP on the South Bank. There's £100 million. Only a fraction of that is coming here, and we need it surely more than Hull when it's got a city of culture, and so it's already benefiting from inward investment
totally
there.
Agree. So elect another Conservative, double the voice.
Well, I don't think he's doing much good at the moment.
I'm talking to the candidates from Hull as well, and I think they would be saying that Hull deserves every penny it gets. And they would also perhaps be arguing that Hull's city of culture is not necessarily going to be a great economic boon, that it's not quite as advantageous as it was. Steve, sorry, you wanted to get in.
If you think back to the days of the Labour government, the only sort of inward money I can remember coming to our area was the previous sort of neighbourhood renewal money, £10 million we got from the previous Labour government. We've had £15 million for the sea defences previously. We've had the Regional Growth Fund, which has bought £3.2 million nationally, and we've had our fair share of that. There's hardly a week goes by when a company's got money from that particular pot of money.
And this is, you mean, in the last 5 years of the Conservative Liberal coalition?
Yeah, and the two key ministries which I've been talking about on green investment, Ed Davey, Liberal Democrat. On business, it's Vince Cable. And those are the two key drivers of this government, in my opinion, who's benefiting this area. It's the Liberal Democrats in government who are creating a stronger and fairer society for North East Lincolnshire.
It's interesting because Vince Cable's been sidelined, hasn't he? So he's
Well,
not really doing a great deal at the moment.
Mark, you know the Conservative High Command better than any of us, is the in government investment, the state investment in this area, the responsibility of subversive Liberal Democrats in the Cabinet, sneaking it through past the Tory masters.
I mean, I would say absolutely not. I think what's been very successful from this coalition is when there's been value to the country and working together, that's worked very well. When it's been a case of driving forward individual initiatives, then individual ministers have done very well. And I'm not here to put down individual Lib Dem ministers. I think some of them have worked very, very hard and done a good job. But to say that Team Lib Dem has done everything and Team Conservative has only done the bad stuff would clearly be nonsense. I think when we look at areas like Grimsby, the focus has to be on jobs, on housing, etc. But when we look at renewables, anybody who thinks that that's a fad, that's going away, is clearly delusional. But you know, we've got to find other industries to bring in on the back of that to make this a prosperous environment.
I want to come back to that, but Melanie, just as the most left wing of the candidates here, why on earth should we be subsidised? Why should the rest of the country be giving us dosh?
Well, I don't think it's about the rest of the country giving us money, is it? The government has a spending plan, and it's about creating industries for the future. And as a whole, the country really needs to look at its whole manufacturing base and start looking at where it can create growth in the economy. And I think that by investing in industry like wind turbines and renewable sector, it's perfect for us because we're on the Humber Estuary. But you know, using local resources to their best advantage is better for the whole of the country. It's not just about our area.
Melanie, thank you very much. On that note, I'm afraid we'll just have to stop for a quick break. Don't go away. Please come back up for the second half, and I'll be talking to the Great Grimsby candidates. See you later. Welcome back to Hot Topic. I'm with the parliamentary candidates for Great Grimsby, Steve Besant for the Liberal Democrats, Melanie On for Labour and Mark Jones for the Conservatives. Others were invited but couldn't make it. We've just been speaking about quite local issues for the first half. You're going to be elected, one of you may be elected to a national legislature. So I'd like to just open it up to some national issues. First of all, the economy, of course. The coalition, Conservative and Liberal coalition, has been attempting to pay down the deficit and the debt, and yet you have different policies for the future. The Conservatives want to pay down the debt and the deficit. The Liberals want to pay down the deficit only. And Melanie, what on earth does the Labour Party want to do? Just keep on spending?
No, I don't think that that's fair at all. The Labour Party has a plan for paying down the deficit, of course, but has a longer-term strategy to make sure that it isn't hitting the poorest hardest, which the Tory and Liberal Democrat policy at the moment is doing. And when I'm talking to people in the street, they are really, really struggling because they are the lowest paid, they're reliant on welfare, they are being hit by the bedroom tax, and they are feeling all the poorer for this government.
But your party's policy is to reduce the deficit, but not to reduce the debt. Now
we're not opposed to borrowing to invest in the country, and I think that that's the right thing to do if you want to grow the economy. And received wisdom now is changing. George Osborne at the beginning of 2010 said, you know, he was going to eradicate the deficit or halve deficit. You know, he had all these grand pledges. He's got nowhere near any of that. And by 2013, he'd revised his austerity plan.
Can I just pick
so it clearly isn't working.
I'll talk to Mark in a moment about the Conservative plan, but just about the Labour plan. The idea of not paying down the debt seems to be just postponing the burden, as it were. And the idea of borrowing more or taxing more in order to spend to grow the economy, in order to then take in greater taxation revenues to bring down the deficit, there seems to be a paradox there, that you borrow more in order to pay down
this isn't a household budget, is it? I think, you know, people need to understand that countries operate.
Mathematics still works the same way, whether they're little numbers or big numbers.
But if you shrink the amount that people are earning, you shrink the amount that they are that they can spend, then clearly you're not going to be able to have enough tax revenue to pay down the deficit, which is exactly what's happening under George Osborne's policy. So actually investing in big infrastructure projects and getting people back to work, Labour thinks that's the right way to go forward. And you have something to show at the end of it, don't you? So you have a new road, or you have a new railway, or you have a new hospital, and those are things that I think communities value too.
Mark, your policy is paying down the debt, but it hurts too much.
Well, I'd have to say, I mean, when I look at the Labour strategy, which seems to be like an older child crashing dad's car and then complaining that dad can't afford to fix it fast enough so they can do it again, seems very strange. We're now seeing that the economy has turned around. We're seeing wages increasing above inflation. We've got inflation very much in control. We've got tax income rising. We've been able to get rid of the fuel rises. There've been some very significant helps to families, and that will continue. And it's through helping working families that we will grow the economy in a sensible, sustainable way.
But you say that you, for instance, say that you've got inflation under control. Is that because of the agency of government, or is that just because oil prices happen to be plummeting at the moment? When you say that the economy is improving, and I think the statistics would suggest that you're right, is that, again, government agency, or is it the fact that economies tend to be cyclical, and after a 7-year recession, things tend to turn up again?
Well, I think you'd have to say that it's things working together. The government should be in tune with what's happening and respond appropriately. So when we say George Osborne's changed his plans, well, that just shows to me that he's got his finger on the pulse and he's in control. If you have a plan and it never changes, then that's when things go wrong. So there's nothing wrong with steering ships around rocky waters. It's just about making sure that we sustainably grow ourselves out of this issue that was caused.
Steve, the Liberal Democrat policy, your man Danny Alexander has been the Chief Secretary of the Treasury for this last Parliament, and of course thus crucial in implementing the Coalition's economic policy. How would a Liberal policy be different from the current Coalition policy?
At present, our aim is to pay down the deficit by 2018. We would go on to lowering the debt, but we recognise that there is still a lot of people out there struggling. Particularly in areas of high deprivation who are on very low income. There's even people out there who's working for less than £10,000 a year who are not even on the minimum wage, and we've got to recognise that we have as candidates we have. And my opinion, we should be doing more to help them. We are naming and shaming those people, those companies who pay less than the minimum wage, but we should be doing a lot more, in my opinion, because a lot of people still out there are struggling, and we should be doing a lot more as government. I think all three of us as candidates would make sure in government that we would be naming and shaming those individuals. There was one recently, locally, which was named and shamed. My view is that we've got to be doing a lot more to help those hard-working families we have. And it's very crucial because the economy is improving, but not quick enough. It's still below 3% growth is. Whatever figures you look at, 2.6% it is, but it wants to be growing a lot faster.
I want to move on to a subject now that is the greatest destination for all that taxed money, which is health. And Mark, people accuse the Conservative Party of the reforms initiated by Conservatives in the National Health Service that tend to have been very administrative reforms, expensive, disruptive reforms, and they don't seem to have made anybody better.
Well, I think largely I would say that the agenda of Labour during this election is to say NHS, Conservative don't work together. Well, clearly that's nonsense. I mean, you only have to look at the Better Care Fund. The first time ever we're actually got health working with social care. We're actually bringing together local authorities and NHS care to make sure that you have one place where people get cared for. We've had issues, people come out of hospital, they then fall into a different sector of care, and it's not joined up. It's very expensive and it's just bad for people. So to say that we have not made massive steps forward with the NHS and with social care would be totally wrong. Is it fixed? Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Everybody would recognise that, but the way to get more money to put into the NHS is to grow the economy, and we're doing that. That means we can put more money into the NHS. So I can only see the NHS going from strength to strength, but it will constantly need monitoring and constantly need a fresh approach, because if you don't do that, you're not responding to the needs of the day.
Melanie, nothing's closer to the heart of the Labour Party than the NHS, and yet you seem to be having a bit of a cardiac arrest at the moment, with Andy Burnham very much on the left saying that everything should be absolutely done by public facilities, public money, and the leadership, Ed Miliband, saying that aspects of the service provided by the NHS should be, if not privatised, then subcontracted out. And this is not just a practical but an ideological argument tearing the Labour Party apart.
If the NHS isn't broken, I don't understand why ambulances are queuing outside of hospitals, why A&Es are being set up in tents in car parks, why we've faced the first winter crisis since before Labour came to power in 1997.
I sense that you're going to answer a question about the NHS, which you're welcome to do in a moment, but I did ask a question about internal politics in the Labour Party.
And if it isn't broken, you know, can Mark explain why my consultant's appointment was postponed 3 times and it's taken me 18 months when I'm supposed to see a consultant every 6 months? Because I know that that is the experience of many people out there. It's not just me. That is the case for lots of people, and it's planned operations, and it's not just about patient care, it's about staff care as well. In terms of ideological difference, I don't think there is any ideological difference. I think that Andy Burnham's been very clear about the process. He said that there is room for private partners in exceptional circumstances, but it's not about wholesale privatisation, which is where the Tories seem to be going. And we're hearing more soundings about payment for going to see GPs from some parties. We're hearing rumours about American-style insurance systems, and those are things that the Labour Party is wholly opposed to.
Would the Labour Party, would a Labour government, were there to be one, spend more on the NHS?
I think it's about making sure that the budget that is available is properly ring-fenced. And when in 2010 we were told that the NHS budget was going to be protected, and what that didn't do was take into account any kind of inflationary pressures. And it also didn't talk about an unnecessary top-down reorganisation that's cost billions. And that is wasted money that doesn't help patients and doesn't help staff. So I think it's about using money wisely. I don't think that the private contracts that are being sent out are actually helping the NHS, and I don't think that they're the most cost-effective way of running the NHS. So making sure that services are in-house has got to be a priority.
Well, Steve, again, your party and coalition has been part of the reforms of the last 5 years. What do you say to Melanie? Is that have they been a waste of money and a waste of time?
I was uneasy about the NHS reforms. It's on record. I voted at full council. But there's been some good things what the coalition have done. They've improved the access to the cancer fund they have for people with cancer as such. So there has been some very, very good things. The Lib Dems have pledged to put $8 billion into the NHS because it is in a threatening situation.
May I stop you, Steve? I just want to get one more quick issue in before we stop, which is the leaders of all your parties. Somehow the leaders of the main political parties, the traditional parties, your parties, have become very unpopular. You know, David Cameron is a bit of an old smarmy pants. Ed Miliband doesn't seem to be able to communicate, or never mind eat a bacon sandwich. And Nick Clegg will never really recover from having to apologise for the university fees. So very quickly, what's wrong with the leaders? A couple of words each. Mark.
It's a simple question. Who do you want in number 10?
Melanie?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with Ed Miliband. He's a man of moral fibre, and people are gaining confidence in him every single day.
Steve?
Nick Clegg had a brilliant conference last year, and he will recover. There's still time to recover.
Thank you very much. Sorry to stop you there. I should have asked that question earlier. Thank you all very much for coming in. That's all we have time for this hot topic. Please join me for the next election special. Until then, goodbye.